Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Sid Negretti. I'm here with Eric Recker and Barbie Fagan, and we're about to launch onto a podcast series, and that's super exciting. And we thought about all the stuff that we wanted to do during the podcast in terms of the content, in terms of when to do it, in terms of when to release the episodes. And at the very last minute, we were trying to come up with the exact right name. And literally just minutes before we recorded our first episode, someone threw out the name The Thin Line. And we did some Google searching and we had some brief conversation and we're like, we like it, let's go. But then somewhere along the line, we said, wait a minute, have we told the audience the story of why we're calling it The Thin Line? So we figured we'd just jump on here and just take you through a very brief mini-sode, if you will, on why we're calling this podcast series The Thin Line. And maybe I can start by asking Barbie if you can just share with us your thoughts on why we're calling it The Thin Line.
Thanks, Sid. And first of all, that someone who threw that name out was Sid. So you get to take ownership for that, Sid. For me, it's really that invisible space where life truly happens. So the line between fear and courage, between waiting and choosing, between reacting and choosing, and really, I like to say, looking at Viktor Frankl's Last of Human Freedoms. We all have a choice in any given set of circumstances. So the invisible line or the thin line for me is that invisible space where we get to determine what's next. We like to say memento mori means we all shall die and or remember we shall die. Well, memento vivere is then remember to live. So again, that thin line is that invisible space between remember we shall die and then remember to live.
So you just mentioned a couple words that maybe, at least I know from until I met you, I had not heard, and that maybe many others haven't heard. Memento mori, let's start there. Talk about the origin of that phrase and what it might mean to you personally. I'm leading you on here because I know that you have a personal connection to that phrase.
I do. Thank you. So memento mori is Latin, and it simply means remember we shall die. It is not a morbid comment. And many times when I say that, and I have a tattoo on the back of my calf that says memento mori, memento vivere, it is truly to remember that life is finite. And so because life is finite, let's remember to live. Let's not put off things in the future. Let's remember to share a kind word when we have the opportunity. Let's, in Eric's words, let's win the now, because truly, memento mori, we all have a one-way ticket. Life's not a dress rehearsal. And so there's so many opportunities to memento vivere, which is choose to enjoy life and live in the moment.
Yeah, and so that was actually the working title when we were thinking through this is Memento Vivere, because I was really struck by that phrase and what it connotes. I did think it was maybe a little tough for some people to pronounce, including myself. And so I was like, oh, what's the workaround for this? We landed on The Thin Line, Eric. What are your thoughts when you think about that name and the name of this podcast and what it might mean to you?
Yeah, Sid, I think it's a lot about choice. And there's not many things that we have under our control, but what we always have is our choice. We always have the opportunity to react in a favorable way or an unfavorable way when something happens to us. I'm going to quote Frankel again when he talked about we have complete control of that space between stimulus and response. Something happens to us. What are we going to do about it? We wake up in the morning. Are we going to choose to have a good day? Or if our wearable tells us that we had a bad night of sleep, are we going to let that set our temperature? When someone else is in a bad mood, are we going to lower our temperature to that? Or are we going to choose to rise above? Are we going to choose to drag our butter on the ground because we have a big workout that we don't really want to do? Or are we going to look at that as an opportunity to get better, to get more fit, to get more ready for the event that we have coming up? So to me, that thin line is that choice that we have. And no matter how finite that is between when something happens to us and how we respond, we own that. There's not a lot in this life that we own, but if we can take that moment, that really thin moment, pause, allow ourselves to have just a little bit more time to react instead of social media, where it's quick and fast and likes and dislikes and comments and all of that. Slow down, extend that space a little bit, make the right choice, and then we move on. It's also the choice between being a victim or rising above. Our whole life can be about this happened to me, but there's a thin line between that and, again, memento vivere. Show up in the moment, win the now, because the now is really all we have.
Yeah, I love that.
So I love all of that. It's extremely powerful, and I love the metaphorical analogies you're placing next to it. If you wouldn't mind, can you share, either of you, share in the last week or so, where you've applied the logic of the thin line, where maybe you found yourself drifting to the other side of it and you need to push and say, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And how can I get back on the right side of that? Just so our audience can understand the application of the frameworks you guys are teeing up.
I'd be happy to share a situation because the thin line is something we don't cross just once. The thin line is something we stand on every single day. So is it every conversation, noticing someone who feels unseen and just reaching out and giving a glance or a smile? It can be these very small things, an ordinary Tuesday. And how are we going to approach that? The thin line doesn't have to mean we're crossing this monumental chasm. It's just these subtle little every act of kindness, every act of disappointment. All of these things, we, as Eric says, have a choice to choose how we respond. And I'll just add one piece is when you have those moments, nice slow breath that deregulates everything is going to give you more of that pause that Eric talks about. So practice your breathing because good breathing equals good listening and helps you make better choices.
That I walk that thin line all day, every day in my dental practice. So all day long, I have scheduled appointments. And then in between those scheduled appointments or during those scheduled appointments, I have to go do exams for my hygienists who are seeing patients for their routine cleanings. And I have to be on every single time I walk into one of those rooms. So I can't carry what happened in room 2 into room 3. That's not fair to the patient who's in room 3. So instead of just super quick going from room 2 to 3, I stop, I pause, I have some little things that I say, and we'll get into some more of that later. But little things that you can say in your head to bring you right back into the moment. You're not sloughing off that previous moment. If there's more to do with that, you pick it up later, but you have to be able to walk that line and you have to be able to be your best for the next person. Like Barbie said, you see somebody just to give somebody a smile and say their name. When I'm walking into room 3, if room 2 was really challenging, I want to still be my best for the patient in room 3 and for my hygienist to give them the best experience that they can so they can be seen, known, and heard. And those are the choices that we really have to make if we want to thrive. And then we go home and we get to do that as well with our families and with our friends. It's super important.
Absolutely. Hey, Sid, we haven't heard what the thin line means to you.
Yeah, I think we've covered it, that in the large degree, to say that in the ideal situation, you may plan a path and you may say, this is how it's going to work out, whether it's a workout, whether it's an interaction at work, whether it's an interaction at home with family members. You may say, this is going to be the way it's going to work out, but you may be tired. The other person may not be responding the same way. And you have many moments along the way, the thin line, this little viscous area along the way that could throw you from that path. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's going to challenge you and bring other results. And it's a constant test of these little mini moments to say, all right, how could I continue to course correct to where I need to be? Does this matter enough to go down the path that I'm being pushed, even though that's not the path I wanted? If so, all right, enjoy that ride and let's go down there. And so to me, it really just means it's a series of mini moments as you go through your day, your life, your interactions, where you're either showing up very well, or you're showing up very poorly, or you're having a chance to correct either behavior along the way. All
Love it.
right. We hope everybody loved that insight. We've got a lot more to share with you. We're super excited about this podcast series. We're going to stop here and then we're going to get this stuff out to you guys. And so you can start listening, thinking about it, giving us some feedback, and hopefully we can bring some interesting insights to your lives. So thank you very much and talk to everybody soon on the Thin Line Podcast.